And welcome back. The SANDF have pulled engineers out of the Vaal. Last year, Deputy President David Mabuza said he was disappointed with the slow pace of the cleanup project at the Sebokeng wastewater treatment facility. This was part of the Vaal River Rehabilitation project, which kicked off last year after the river was polluted by raw sewage from pump stations in the Ekurhuleni municipality. In 2018, the former Water and Sanitation Minister Gugile Nkwinti appointed the East Rand Water Care Company, or ERWAT, an entity of the Ekurhuleni Metro, as the implementing agent for the initial 341 million rand Vaal sewage cleanup. He said, as a wastewater specialist company, ERWAT will ensure that all wastewater treatment infrastructure is resuscitated to an operational state and that pollution in the Vaal River is stopped. We're joined now by Tumelo, Gopane, who's the managing director at ERWAT. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening to SABC and your listeners.
Let's just talk about the status of the work. As I mentioned, the SANDF has been pulled out, and you're to work jointly with the SANDF at some point. So how far are you with the project?
Yeah, the project has moved quite a bit, not as far as we would like to have moved. Initially, the SANDF was working on its own. They've done quite a bit of cleanup, especially in the wastewater, in the Sebokeng wastewater treatment plant. We joined the project in November 2018, but only got a purchase order to start working at the end of August. But before that, we were part of all the preliminary planning that goes into trying to get off the ground with such a complex
Now,
project.
I'm sure you're aware of the criticism against appointing you. You yourselves have been accused of being part of water pollution. What is your response to that?
Well, we have only one plant that is giving us challenges, and that is the Olifantsfontein wastewater treatment works, which discharges into the whole Henopse system that ends up at the Hartebees Dam. However, we are busy refurbishing the
So you do admit
plant.
that you've encountered problems with regards to water pollution where you have been working?
Correct, but that is not a competence issue, it's an infrastructure issue. So I think we need to distinguish between those two.
So take us through that. What is then the distinction for those who are an ordinary man on the street who wouldn't understand? Because then the question around your competence is, of course, then raised.
Correct. I think that means the media and those criticizing, especially when they are professionals, they should desist from sensationalizing the issue and speak to the facts. So the Ekurhuleni wastewater treatment plants, more than half of them are running above capacity. So even if you can get the best engineers and the best scientists in the world, they will never produce perfect water. In fact, ERWAT scientists and engineers should be heralded by the country, because running some of the wastewater treatment plants that are running at above 150, 160% above capacity are still producing water at the desired 90% levels that have been set by government.
At what cost has that been? And I ask this because part of your critics have questioned your accounting practices, saying that you are unable to perform your task at a reasonable, cost-effective model.
Yeah, once more, the critics are looking at a quick buck of coming to refurbish plants. Right. Why we are here at Ekurhuleni and quite a few places around the country is because infrastructure operation and maintenance has been inadequate. So we can throw as much capex as we want to on infrastructure. If we're not going to run, operate and maintain wastewater treatment plants as they're supposed to be operated and maintained, we will be back in the same point again, even after spending billions of infrastructure. So ERWAT, by any account, still runs the best wastewater treatment plants in the country in terms of performance. We're still the only ones who are following the green drop system, even though it was suspended by the department. We're still the only ones who sample daily. So So as I'm saying, the competence issue is not the competence side is not an issue. The challenge that we have is, like in most bulk infrastructure across the country.
And I mean, you say it's about, the suggestion is that some people want to cut corners, and you're saying that it's money well spent, but it's about also value for money. So some people are questioning, why wouldn't it go through the normal procurement channels? Why wouldn't the amount of money being spent on the project not go through those channels? Why, for instance, just the initial phase, according to reports, should it cost 1 billion rand for your collaboration with the Department of Defense, the SANDF?
Well, when we cost projects, we base the costs on equipment and machinery and spares that come from the private sector. So sometimes I get a bit concerned or surprised when the private sector says ERWAT is being appointed and they could have done it cheaper, because there is no government entity. ERWAT is a government entity that produces pumps. There is no government entity that produces motors, gearboxes. So all of those things are going to be sought from the private sector in any case. So the biggest bulk of this cost in any case is going to end up in the private sector, because the equipment, machinery, spares that is going to be utilized to get Ekurhuleni up to speed will be bought from the private sector. And in any project, construction project, a good 50, 60, 70%, sometimes even up to 80% of the costs go to the equipment.
Let's talk about the scope of the project, what you're working with. Some people say, at least some experts which you refer to, are saying that it's actually quite a complex problem, and they wonder if this has been factored in. About 40 pumping stations, which they say has been seized up as a result of a solid waste or wastewater management problems. So do you concur with this? And is this what you believe is driving up the costs?
Correct. It is a very complex project, mainly because we're working on a brownfield system. So what that means from an engineering perspective is it's not a greenfield project. A greenfield project is obviously where you start construction from zero, where it's bare land, and then you start. That's the easiest project to do. But we will be working on a live system which still receives water. I mean, since we got fully on the ground in December and started unblocking on the reticulation side of the network to alleviate the challenges for the communities, we're starting to see more water going into the smoking wastewater treatment plants.
But what is the ultimate goal? You say you are unblocking at the moment, but is the end goal being replacing the entire sewage system?
Not the entire. So we won't know that up until now, and that's why even yesterday when the minister was in the Vaal, and I was asked a question by the media, some of your colleagues, that what is the time frame and at what cost? So we said the figure that we've provided, the 1.1 billion, which by the way we should subtract the costs for the SANDF on the 1.1 billion for the couple of months for a year almost, is we have 60-70% confidence levels on those figures. So what needs to happen is, once we've exposed the infrastructure which is inside the plants themselves, and we've cleared the lines and sent cameras down the lines, we'll be able to have an accurate view of what needs to be replaced and so on. Because currently the plants are covered with sludge, so you can't tell what is the state of the infrastructure, and the pipes are full of all sorts of things that are not supposed to be in there. They need to be cleared, and then we need to send cameras down there, and then only we'll be able to come with figures that are 100% having 100% confidence levels.
Just very quickly, and I know you say it's very hard for you to estimate when people will be able to drink from the source, but from the work that you've done already, that you're anticipating, that you need to do, what are your estimations?
Yes, as we said, we've already given the high-level estimations. That is the 1.1 billion minus the SANDF cost. So ERWAT was part of developing.
No, I'm talking about access to clean drinking water. When do you anticipate that people will be able to?
Yes, okay, I was coming to that. So I guess I was giving you the cost aspect first. So yes, so the cost, as we said, it's 1.1 billion minus the SANDF costs, which ERWAT was part of developing and refining. And then for now, we're still estimating a maximum of 3 years to refurbish the entire infrastructure. The biggest, where we're going to spend the most time is to replace the underground pipes. To refurbish infrastructure that's above ground, which is the plants and the pump stations, is the easier part because that's above ground. But when we start to have to work on the pipelines, that's going to be a bit of a messy setup as well as a complex setup.
And I hope that we have you then to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you very much for your time. Tumelo Gopane is Managing Director at ERWAT.